I'm starting this podcast with Till I Collapse by Eminem. I think it's appropriate for this podcast. I'm not even sure what I'm going to call it yet, but this podcast is a real touchy subject, okay? It's going to pull up emotions that I have not wanted to pull up. But a certain friend request this past week stirred up this pot for me, and it's fresh emotions. So let's just roll with it. Let me go ahead and get this story out so we can go ahead and get this shit on the table and talked about. And I'm starting out with Eminem and a little weed because that's how trashy y'all say I am, okay? So I'm going to dedicate this podcast to my ex-mother-in-law with my second marriage. I can't say her real name out in public like this, so we're going to call her Joyce with big J right there on the beginning. I'm dedicating this podcast to Joyce with a J. Let's get started. This podcast right here is going to be about my son. I haven't talked about my son in a long time. His birthday was last month. And I was going to do the podcast then. I was rolling with my podcast. I was feeling good about it. I was going to put it out. And something held me back from it. Then last week, my ex-husband's new wife sent me a friend request on Facebook. Let me turn this down a little, okay? And I think it just answered the question that I've been asking God. Do I need to talk about this subject? And he answered it boldly. Yes, you need to talk about it. Now, my question is, I'm not real sure why she sent me the friend request. Because I do not know her and she does not know me. The only thing she knows is the stories that have been told inside that family. And I'm here to set the record clear, okay? Because I'm sure she did not get the correct answers. So I'm going to tell the stories the way they happened to me. And then she can take her own opinions and put them where the sun don't shine. But anyway, okay. Maybe she's looking for some answers. Maybe she has questions because they've been married about a year. Maybe, because it was about a year into mine when I started having questions too, boo-boo. So I'm just here to answer them. It's dedicated to my mother-in-law, but it's actually to my ex-husband's wife, okay? From your friend request. I don't know why you want to stir up shit that I've left in the past. And since you wanted to do that, I'm going to stir it up. So let's talk about it. I'm going to tell my side of the story because they got to tell their story to their small town, a couple hundred people, okay? They told their lies to the small town gossip column and made me look like white trash. And I've worked hard to build my platform to 72,000 people that actually follow me because they love what I have to say. They love my personality. They love my humor. They love how I'm a mother and a grandmother. 72,000 people that I get to tell the truth to. So just sit back, enjoy the show. But let's get started. My second marriage was to a guy that I had went to high school with. I'd actually dated him in high school. I took dance from his mom in second grade. I knew their family. Their family had been in the same community with my family and yada, yada, yada. Okay. She was the dance teacher. Okay. Everyone knew the Miss Joyce. The Miss Joyce. She judges pageants and all that kind of stuff. And, she Miss Beauty Queen from that county, Mississippi. Her daddy was the sheriff for 25 years and things like that. They made it look sparkles and bows and blah, blah, blah. And I just thought this is going to be so great. I started dating her son. We had been friends in high school. He had been in my first marriage because he was best friends with my first husband. Is that not nuts? I know. It's a long story. But anyway, not only was he in my first marriage, he was in my second marriage because I married him. But anyway, we got married and everything was great. She was the most fantastic mother-in-law anyone could ask for. She was my best friend. She supported me through everything that had happened with me and him and blah, blah, blah. And I just fell in love with her. Her son, on the other hand, was a nightmare, okay? Well, because he was a drug addict. Because he is a drug addict. And the thing about it is, yes, I knew this before I married him. But I also believe in people have second chances. You know, people need second chances. I hope I can edit the hell out of this because I am stumbling along here. This one is hard for me, okay? Hard for me. And if I post the unedited version again and it gets on out there, don't be laughing at me because I'm struggling. Okay, I'm struggling with this one. Y'all just laugh along with me, smoke some flowers, mind your business, and just keep listening, okay? Anywho, I knew that he had been a drug addict. But I believed at that point in time, because I was oblivious to what drugs are, I believed that people could change. I believed that if you had been through rehab, and my God, he had just got out of prison for drugs. And he was talking to me like he was plain as day, like he was just me and you talking. I believed he had changed. I believed every word that came out of his mouth. I mean, this is the guy I knew. This is the guy I had dated. This is the guy that had been our best friend for years. Anywho, I should have listened to my gut because there was something in my gut saying, Denise, you're crazy. Well, it wasn't just my gut. It was my parents. It was everybody around me was telling me, what in the hell, Denise? He's got a reputation. Everybody knew he was crazy as hell. Why are you getting with this guy? Anyway, I was done. My parents, you know, I was sick of people telling me what to do. He just swept me off my feet. I married him. Well, first I got pregnant and then I married him. You know, because that's how I roll. I get pregnant and then I marry him. Because I'm white trash. Ha, ha, ha. Anyway. We got married while I was pregnant. And shortly after that, I was working in a lab and I was on my feet all day long. And I was kind of stressed out at home because just things were not going as I thought they were going to go, and it was real stressful. I had questions a lot about what he was doing and things like that, and I couldn't figure it out because I don't know about drugs. I do now, but I didn't then. Okay, so anyway, I went into preterm labor at 15 weeks pregnant. And then at 19 weeks pregnant, I went on full-term bed rest. I had a TER pump in my leg and all that kind of stuff. I had to have monitors and all that malarkey. It was miserable. But while I was laying in the bed on my back with monitors on, he was shooting drugs in the carport and in the bathroom and everywhere where my girls were. He would come in and kneel beside the bed to talk to me during the day. And he would have big knots on top of his hand with blood coming out of it. And I'd say, oh my God, what is wrong with your hand? And he would say it was a spider bite or whatever, or a hammer, you know, something got him while he was working outside. It was always an excuse. And I was so naive and so pregnant and so trying to keep my baby alive inside of me that I just didn't really focus on that, because it would have drove me crazy laying there worried about it all the time. My parents really didn't have anything to do with me, so I was kind of by myself, okay? I try to keep things happy for my two girls and stuff like that. I was thrown into preterm labor from stress of my husband overdosing himself in the hospital. I don't remember what he was in there for. It was some bullshit. Like he had hurt himself at work. And, you know, when he would get in there, he would get pain medicine and yada, yada, yada. And all this. And he would actually get admitted. Okay. And they would give him like strong medications like morphines and whatever. Even though they knew that he was a drug addict. He wanted me to stay at the hospital with him. Even though I had kids at home. My parents kept my kids or his mama kept my kids, whatever. So I could stay there and baby him. I had to have those monitors. So I would lay on the little pull-out bed with these monitors on me. I was laying there with the monitors on me, and he comes out of the bathroom with his just looking crazy and says something to me like in Japanese, falls out in the middle of the hospital floor, and I jump up, get tangled up in an IV, tangled up in my monitors, and I'm big pregnant, and he died right in front of me because he went in the bathroom and overdosed himself. That's going to be a completely different story. I'm going to tell you the horror stories of what he did as a drug addict, stories you would not even believe. So anyway, he overdoses himself in the bathroom, and he's laying there dying, turning silver, and I didn't know what to do. The hospital people come, they get me and they take me out. I'm thrown into full-term labor, and I know I'm not looking at the camera, y'all, but I'm trying to just go with it, okay? Anyway, he threw me into preterm labor. I'm on one floor, like, trying to not have our baby. He's on another floor, like detoxing. It was a nightmare. When I got out of the hospital, his mama took me to her house. Eventually, the baby came. And when the baby was born, he had a collapsed lung, and the cord was wrapped around his neck. I had to have a C-section, all this kind of stuff. It was ridiculous. The baby was in the NICU unit. But my husband was not there to walk me back and forth across the hospital to see my baby. His mother and her best friend was. They walked me back and forth across the hospital while he was in the emergency room getting more drugs. And she knew it. But everybody was trying to keep me calm because I just had a baby, blah, 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 blah. And they were trying to sweep everything under the rug, you know, with questions of people asking, where was he? So we get home with the baby, and I see him and his family, like his siblings, under the carport, just having it out there, okay? And I didn't know what it was about, you know, because we were supposed to be celebrating because I just brought the baby home, blah, blah, blah. My family was not there, of course. It was just my girls. So I was trying to enjoy it with his family as much as I could. They were out there arguing, whatever. Nobody would tell me what was going on. So when they left, I called his sister, and I was like, can somebody tell me what is going on? And finally she told me that his brother had went through my house because he was actually the chief enforcement officer for the ABC. And he was, in state police. So he went through my house and found all of his brother's things because this was a pattern that they knew that I didn't. And they were hiding it from me. I guess they thought I was going to fix him or something. So finally they started telling me the things that they had found. And I was like, oh my God. You know, I had seen that smudge on the sink, and I didn't know that it was from a burnt spoon. I had seen that. Oh my God, I didn't know that was a. I'd seen these chewed up straws. I didn't know what that was. I had seen these rubber bands. I didn't know what that was. So they started telling me, and they thought that he needed an intervention. So his daddy came one night to pick him up, and his mama came and got me and the baby and took us down the road, and we sat in the car for 2 or 3 hours while they went in there to get him and take him to daddy's house to rehabilitate him. He stayed gone for a week or two, whatever, and I'm here by myself with a brand new baby. As always. So apparently they rehabilitated him, what they thought. He went to a rehab, okay? They put him in rehab. We had to travel back and forth to see him, okay? It was ridiculous. Anywho, come to find out, we were living in a house that he was exchanging work for rent, okay? Supposedly he was doing some work for this woman that he had known for a long time. She was some kind of Bible beater, Southern Baptist, blah, 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 blah. Go by the rule kind of woman. She worked at the DA's office or some kind of bullshit like that, okay? I don't remember because I've put these memories so far deep down in the graves that I don't remember all the little details. The little bitty details don't matter. It's the big shit, okay, that matters in the story. Anywho, this woman needed some work done on her house because when we moved into it, it had been flooded, okay? And my husband at the time portrayed himself to be a contractor, an electrician, and all this stuff like that. And he didn't have any license of his own. He used everybody else's license, and he was like a subcontractor, something. But he wasn't none of those things, okay? He was just an ex-con felon. But anywho, he and his mother made false receipts for companies that didn't even exist to make it look like he had paid all this money out to these places so he could get paid by the insurance company. Okay, insurance fraud. He did it all the time. So anywho, the woman figured out what he was doing, kicked us out of the house, and we had to move. Not only did she do that, but she filed charges. She got all of his receipts together, and it added up to over $5,000, which is a felony. So anywho, she got him put in prison. Okay, and it happened like a year or two later. So he was out roaming free. We went and built a business up and all this kind of stuff. And then boom, he went to prison. He got 5 years, 3 suspended, 2 to serve. Yes, while I was with him, he went to prison for 11 months. And I raised our son and my daughter by myself. But let's rewind. The year or and a half while he was waiting for his trial and to go to prison and all this, what happened during that? Not only was I living with a drug addict that was schizophrenic and losing his mind, making me lose my mind, struggling like nobody's business. Not only was I doing that, but I was fighting tooth and nail to keep my children. My 2 girls that I had raised by myself. One was 12 years old, and the other one was 5, 6 years old. And then I had my son. My family was using my ex-husband to take me to court to take my 2 kids away from me, my 2 girls, if I stayed in the marriage I was in. If I left the marriage I was in to go back to my family that was trying to take these kids away from me, I lost this son. So no matter which way I went, it was a tug of war. Somebody wanted my kids. They either wanted these 2 or they wanted this one. I was going to lose the girls or the boy. It didn't matter. I was going to lose them regardless. And, you know, it got to where if I stayed with the drug addict, I was going to end up losing my life or my kids' lives. So I was trying to make tough decisions, but it was really hard when these people are forcing me to do this. So anyway, my father-in-law at the time was, or he still is, an attorney, okay, a family law attorney. He represented me and proved that I was a fit mother and that I could keep my kids. Not only did my family put me through hell trying to take my kids, they had all of these people watching me. That we had one of those guardian ad litem things. I had DHS coming to my house all the time. People were paid in the neighborhood where we were living to come to court to say that my kids were coming and banging on their door saying they were starving to death. It was ridiculous. I had people following me and my kids at the grocery store that were paid by my family to spy on me and to tell them what was going on. They broke in my house. It was all kind of things that people were doing to me. And I was living with a drug addict trying to save my life. He was overdosing all the time. It was ridiculous. I saved his life 4 times. I will give y'all this little story. He overdosed one night, and it was like the last night. It was the very last night that I ever watched him overdose. I woke up in the middle of the night, and his drug of choice was Dilaudid. Okay, he would take the pills, crush them, burn it down, shoot it up, whatever, however he did it. I woke up and he was not in the bed. And when I went in the bathroom, he was snoring, but he wasn't snoring on his breath in. He was snoring on the breath out. So he was going, and you could tell it was like a gurgling noise. So he was dying. I was so sick of saving him that I really didn't care if he died at that point. I really thought it would probably be better for me if he did. So I called his mom and I told her, he overdosed again. What do you want me to do? And she said, you know what? Just close the door and leave him in there. I said, what? She said, he obviously wants to die and we can't save him. If he wants to die, he's going to die. Just close the door and leave him in there. I closed the door and left him in there, and I locked the door, and I didn't lock the door. I hung the phone up, and I sat on the end of the bed for just a split second. And I'm thinking, if you let him die, that's on your shoulders for the rest of your life, regardless of how low down and dirty he is. So I got up and I went in the bathroom, and I took a sheet in there with me, and I wrapped his body in a sheet. And I pulled it out in the middle of the bedroom floor, and I did CPR until the ambulance got there. They got there, and by the time they got there, they shot him with Narcan. He was in the back of the ambulance throwing up, telling me that he loved me and he wanted me to come to the hospital. And I told him, I saved your life, and that's the last time I'm going to do it. What you do with, what you do with it now is on you. They took him out of there. So apparently I stayed. I don't know what, my family didn't have anything to do with me. So how could I go back to a family that was trying to take my kids from me? But my father-in-law, remember, he was proving how fit of a mother I was. So by this point, my 12-year-old didn't want to live with me anymore. I didn't blame her at that point. So she chose to go with her dad, who was trying to take him away from me, and the youngest one wanted to stay with me, and the judge let me keep him because I was a fit mother. Okay. And he goes to prison. I was going to go back home. I was going to call my family and say, I can't do this anymore. I want to go back home. And she told me, you can't do that. If you stay here, I will pay your rent. Where we were living, it was very expensive. And we were renting, and we lived on a golf course in an Italian Tuscany home, and blah, blah, blah. We were running a bowling alley and all this kind of stuff. And it was their family business. But anyway, I couldn't afford any of that. I couldn't afford that, living there and all that. So she told me, if you stay here, I will sell trees on my family's land and give you the money, use that every month to pay your rent, as long as you keep a job, blah, 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 whatever. So she even sent me to insurance, to get my insurance agent license. I was an insurance agent, and I did all of that. She helped me do that, and I was doing good. For a year, I was there at the house, raised my 2 kids by myself. We went every week an hour away to visit him in prison. I took my son. I took my daughter. It was humiliating, okay? We never told my son where he was. We just told him that he was at work. He would talk to him on the phone and things like that. He would see him at work. And they never told him. Even the older he got, I was told to never tell him. They never wanted him to know where his daddy was. So when he got out of prison, as soon as he got home, everything started back. All of his paranoia, all of his shooting up, all of his everything, accusing me of this and accusing me of that, and thinking people were outside looking at us, and having cameras stuck everywhere so he could watch what we were doing. And it was awful. So I wasn't going to put up with it anymore. I was so tired of it. I was going to take my kids and I was going home. I was going back to my family. And he let me know that if I left, that I would never see my son again. That they would take him from me permanently, and they would make sure that I would never get him again. And they did. When I decided to leave, I left my son with them until, till I could go to my parents, work it out, and I was going to come pick him up, and then we were going to work. And when I come back to get him, like 2 or 3 days later, I couldn't get him. I even took the police with me. Okay, I called the sheriff's department to go with me. And when we got there, I was told to stay down the street. And the police officer came down there where I was, and I could hear her up there screaming and acting like a holy idiot. Screaming that I was going to hurt him and all this kind of stuff. The police officer came down there and told me that the mayor of the town is really good friends with her, and she called the mayor, told her what was going on, and the mayor told us to tell the chief of police to tell us that the child is not to be removed, because she did not know who I am, but she does know the person where the child is, and she knows the child will be safe until they could get this before a judge. He's the attorney and friends with the judge. So I never got my son back. They talked me into signing a 6-month temporary custody thing to where I had visitation and all this until I could get on my feet where I was trying to go to. They make sure everything was copacetic and all this kind of stuff, because I'd had issues with my family before, and I understood that, and I trusted her because I had loved her like a mother. This is my ex-mother-in-law, my mother-in-law at the time. I loved her like a mother. We were super close. I mean, I even inspected a pimple on her butthole one time. Yeah. Tell that to your pageant judge friends. Anyway, that's how close we were. And she always told everybody that if she got decrepit to where to where she couldn't even wipe her ass and she was in an old folks home, she knew that I would be the daughter-in-law that would help her out, that would be there to take care of her before her own children would. She said that about me all the time. That's how much she loved me while I did what she wanted me to do. While I was there keeping their secrets. While I was there putting on the smile and sweeping everything under the rug. When I decided to turn around and walk away, she threw all that in the garbage and she took my son away from me. I never realized why, but now I know. Her son, her oldest son, died at 40-something years old with stage 4 lung cancer. He was the good one. He was the one that everybody looked up to. He was an upstanding citizen. He was the one that kept their family in good standing, if you will. He died with stage 4 lung cancer, so he was gone. And her youngest son, my ex-husband, was in prison all the time. He was a drug addict. So she had lost both of her sons, one to death and one to drugs. So she needed a replacement. So she took mine, because that was a replica of her youngest son. So she got a do-over, you see. She got a do-over. They told everybody that I just signed my son and walked away. I went, I couldn't afford an attorney because I was a single mom. And so I tried to go through the state and get the free help and all that. And they looked at my file and said that everything was so discombobulated in my stuff that it would take me years to get my son. So nobody would ever take my case, especially the free attorneys, the pro bono, whatever people. And then it was going to cost me so much. They would just keep it strung along. They've always said that they would see how deep people's pockets were. So all those things that I lived through with her drug addicted son everything that I endured, everything that I lied about, everything that I put under the rug for them didn't mean shit to her in the end. Nothing. Blood was thicker than water. And she proved it. I do not understand. Before I say that, I forgot I need to put this in here. When I was using my visitation, they also said I stopped using my visitation. Sometimes I did make excuses to not go because I was supervised at her house every time I would go over for my visitation. I had to be supervised at her house to see my son. And this started when he was 4. Up till then, I had raised him practically by myself because his dad had been in prison or in drug rehab or in jail. And when he was just ripped out of my arms and I didn't get him back, it was like the death of a child. And then I would have to go to her house and see him under her terms. I couldn't get on to him the way I was seeing him being raised the way I didn't want him to be raised. She would undermine what I would say in front of him. And the more they took me to court, the more my visitation was taken away. And when I would go over there, I could tell that parental alienation was a big thing that was going on, but judges do not realize that. They don't, they don't use that as a ruling or whatever you want to say. I have multiple sclerosis, so I don't know what the technical term is, but anyway, I don't think they use that as a ruling at all. But anyway, I would take my daughter over there with for visitations with him because that's her little brother. She was hurt too when he was just taken out of our house. And when we would go over there, she would say, "Hey, little brother," or something like that. And he would say, "You're not my sister. You're my cousin." And the cousins, he would say, was his brother and sister because he was around them all the time. And that would hurt my daughter's feelings so bad that eventually I had to make a choice. Am I going to keep hurting this child too? I had to make a choice. It hurt her so bad to see him when he didn't even recognize that she was his sister. And so when my visitations kept getting cut back, he kept saying stuff to me like, one of the last times I was over there, she left to go get a pedicure with her granddaughter. And my son had always said he was scared of me because there was an incident that happened. That's another thing. He almost got ran over and I scared him because I cussed the woman out that almost ran over him. It scared him because I was being too loud. And so he went home crying. I went home crying because I knew that she was not going to let me see him again. Anyway, from that, she took it that I terrified him and he was terrified of me and I'm a monster and all this. And she turned me into a monster with him in his mind. She said he had nightmares about me and all this kind of stuff. So he was always terrified of me. And she would say that he didn't want to spend time with me because he was terrified of me. And she just put that in his head and he went with it. So parental alienation was a big, huge thing that was used in this scenario. So eventually after, when I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him, he got this thing in his head about who I was because of what they were telling him. And when I would go over there, before I would get to go back in the room with him where he was playing and we were watched with cameras. Oh, the pedicure. I asked him when they left to go to the pedicure, I said, "Why are you not scared with me right now?" And he said, "Because she has cameras all in here and she's watching us on her phone." Okay. So they turned me into a monster in my son's head. Okay. So he was turned against me. And I couldn't endure the pain anymore. So I kind of pulled back and stopped going. But when I got with my new husband, the guy I'm with now, she let my son come over to my house one time. He played, and they shot guns, and we watched TV, we made cupcakes, and all this fun stuff. And he was laid out on my couch and wanted to spend the night with me. He asked me, could he call her to see if he could spend the night with me? And I was like, sure, buddy. We called, and she immediately said no. No, your papa is coming to get you. No, we're not allowing that. Papa came and picked him up, and he never got to come back to my house again. Matter of fact, I didn't even really talk to him again after that. She wouldn't let me talk to him. When she realized that he had a good time at my house and he wanted to be with me, that was the end of it. And that's the last time I've seen him. That's the last time I saw him, and he was 7. He just turned 13 this past month. I have let these things lie. I've just let them be dormant because they hurt so bad that I just buried them down so deep. And it took years for me, because it was like, when I went through counseling and therapy and all of that, they tell me that it was kind of worse than the real death of a child, because you're grieving the loss of a child that is still alive, that you cannot have anything to do with. And there's no reasoning for it. I don't understand how anyone can take a child away from a mother. I do not understand how the Miss Joyce that taught hundreds of kids how to dance, who judges beauty pageants, who makes it look like her family is so intact and perfect in your little brick town. I don't know how you sleep at night. I don't know how you, in good conscience, live on a day-to-day basis, knowing what you've done. I have no clue how you could support a drug-addicted son that put me and that baby and my daughter through hell, that we kept silent for you, and you took away my son and said that I was white trash that walked away from him. You twisted the story so beautifully that your little circle believed every word. You go to your Methodist church, you take my son with you, you teach him Bible verses and to love the Lord. And I thank you for that. I thank you for taking care of my son. I do not thank you for the way you raised him, because I do not believe in the way you raised him. But that wasn't my choice, was it? I do pray for you. I pray that God somehow, someday, softens your heart and makes you realize the wrongs that you have done. I hope that God gives you balls enough to apologize, to acknowledge what you've done and apologize, and actually tell my son that I am not all of those things that you said. But that's asking for a miracle from God. One day, my son will have questions. And when he wants to ask me, I am sitting right here to answer them. I'm not sure what is going on over there with y'all, but the new daughter-in-law sent me the friend request last week. I accepted, and I saw all of my son's pictures. It's not the first time I've seen his pictures. I see all of y'all's social medias every day. So I've watched my son grow. I've kept up with him. And when he wants to know the questions, he will know. But I don't need the new daughter-in-law messing in my business, because y'all got what you wanted, and I walked away, and I left you alone. I moved out of the freaking state, okay, 4 hours from y'all to gain my peace. So this is me telling my side of the truth. And if anybody wants to question anything that I've said, this right here is all of my truth. It has all my pictures. As a matter of fact, see, there's my son. There's my daughter and my son. So let me show you the fun that me and my daughter had. Me and my son had. Aw, that looks like somebody that would be mean to their son, don't it? Yeah, that's me and him. He didn't love his mama at all. That's him. You know, we had fun at the splash pad. I took him fishing. Just fun things that we did. Ooh, I was a heifer back then. Look how big I was. Depression. That's what that is. He's so sweet. We just had a lot of fun, but you know, this is him at my place not having any fun. This is him not loving his mama. Yeah. This is him not loving his sister. This is him going on his first field trip when he lived with me when his dad was in prison. But he was a real sad child with his mama. Just cute little things, you know, just adorable little things. Anywho, and then, you know, it's public record, but I do have, I can't show y'all because I've got all of his prison records and he was on Mississippi's Most Wanted, okay? Because he was hiding in the cave in a deer camp, okay? I mean, just all kind of shit. And then after he got out of prison the second time when I was married to him and we got divorced, he went to prison again for his third time for robbing a cell phone store. I don't know. But anyway, I don't understand the whole situation. But there's one last thing I forgot to say. Y'all want to know how she really got my son away from me? Well, years into it, I didn't know this. I didn't know I could go to the courthouse and look at my file to see what was in there. So I just thought, I got these weird papers in the mail with everything. You know, I was getting a divorce from him, but I had a custody battle with his mama. But I got these papers and it was all put together. And it was over. And I was like, well, what is this? So I went to the courthouse and I started looking at my file. And the first paper that was in there, I never saw. Because I don't have an attorney, so there was nobody to give me the paper. They just put it in the file. She filed a paper in there stating that, basically, that my 4-year-old son at this time said that I was sexually abusing him, that I was touching him in inappropriate places. She said that when he would go over to her house, he would tell her things like that. Now, it came to my attention that nobody ever said this before now until I wanted to get out of an abusive marriage, right? So they went to the courthouse and filed the paper. So they would have that in there, sexual abuse. I mean, if a 4-year-old accuses you of sexually abusing them and the granddaddy is the attorney, if that would have went before the judge, I probably would have went to prison. And how do you get out of that? But the reason it wasn't filed is because that was her plan all along. Had I not signed the 6-month temporary custody paper, they would have filed the sexual assault or sexual thing that I sexually molested my child. They would have filed that, where they would have gotten the permanent custody of my child. You see, she had a backup plan. That's how dirty the Miss Joyce is. And if anybody has any questions about that paper, because they didn't want to talk about it once I brought it up, I have it in my file if anybody wants to see. So, don't always believe. Don't judge a book by its cover. A little brick house on a hill in the ritzy part of town. Don't always believe, because it's not what it seems. Makes me curious though to see if the new, is the new wife needing some questions answered? If so, you're barking up the wrong tree, doll. Barking up the wrong fucking tree.